Hi guys, Micah Fights with Friends. For those of you that are constant viewers of this channel, this is probably not going to come as any surprise to you. Today, USADA announced that through an independent arbitrator, they've rendered a decision in the case of one Jonathan Jones that he should receive no more than a 15-month sanction for his second violation of the UFC anti-doping policy. This decision comes out of the facts of the case were presented and fully argued at an evidentiary hearing on September 15, 2018. So they did this over the weekend on the Darkness. Jones, 31, tested positive, of course, for a prohibited substance as a result of a sample collected during the in-competition testing period on July 28, 2017. It's been that long. Before his bout at UFC 214 in Anaheim, California. So he would be eligible, surprise, surprise, ding, 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 to come back on September 28th. Now, UFC 230 is already a ginormous card. You have, of course, Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier. That would be a great fight. I hope that would end up being the co-main still, and somehow they make that a 5-round fight. Please, please, Dana, make that a 5-round fight. You have the return of Jacare Souza, though, taking on David Branch. You have Derek Brunson and the style bender Israel Adesanya. Let's break away from Jones for a second. That is a big fight, and that is a big step up in competition for Israel Adesanya. Just still, I believe, in his first year in the UFC, or right around a year, maybe 15 months. But yeah, he'll be taking on Derek Brunson, a guy that could, let's face it, he could beat anybody in the 185-pound division on any given night. I'm not saying he is the best, but he's definitely top 5, and he could beat any of the top 5, I believe, on any given night. Israel Adesanya, I doubted him when they tested him against Brad Tavares. I thought it was too early. He went through that test with flying colors. I'm not doubting him this time. I don't know what the odds are going to be. I'm very excited about that fight, though. Just breaking off on that for a moment. Like I said, everybody hit that like and subscribe button. If you're new here, your MMA IQ is going to immediately rise by at least 20 points, guaranteed. But I got to say, Israel Adesanya, if he wins that fight, especially if he can win impressively, I would think he's probably 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot, given the impressiveness of his wins, the caliber of his opponents, his fan base, he's got an entertaining style. That's very important to the UFC, of course. They want to sell tickets. So you want a champion that sells tickets. I think Israel Adesanya is well on his way. If not right now, he obviously could face a stumbling block in Derek Brunson. That's a very tough guy. But Israel Adesanya, I believe, might be the future of that division. But right now, we got to talk about the main event of UFC 230. And, of course, that's going to be Jon Jones, because his suspension, they figured it out, it's now going to end on August 28th. And, October 28th. And UFC 230 is what? November 3rd. I've told you guys, I've been saying this the entire time. Like I said, you guys are smart. I don't think most of you were surprised by this. But prior to the hearing, USADA had actually determined that a 30-month reduction in the otherwise applicable period of eligibility was appropriate under the rules based on Jones' delivery of substantial assistance. Evidence related to Jones' substantial assistance was presented at the hearing and considered by the arbitrator. That substantial assistance has never been named. It's very vague. He gave them some of the supplements he'd been taking, which he was required to do before, and then all of a sudden he comes up with a bunch of supplements. Oh, I forgot to give you all of these. Well, of course, what most people would do in John Jones's case, if they're wanting to pass that test, is go out and buy a bunch of supplements that you think might get popped. Take a trip to Brazil. He couldn't even figure that out. He couldn't even find a supplement that was tainted. As far as I know, if he did, they never said that he did. They said that all the supplements were clean. Sanction was further reduced by the arbitrator, so down to 18 months wasn't enough. The 30-month reduction, that reduced it down to 18 months. Sanction was further reduced by the arbitrator based on Jones' reduced degree of fault and the circumstance of the case, including the fact that John Jones had been tested on multiple occasions leading up to UFC 240 and as recently as 3 weeks prior to the event, all of which yielded negative results for prohibited substances. Now, that was a very strange thing. And John Jones literally, one day he tested negative, the next day he tested positive, the day after he tested negative. I can't remember what days those were. I believe he tested positive. He tested positive on July 28th. So it would have been 27th and 29th. He was clean those days. So, like I said, that gets him back literally less than a week before UFC 230. Now, the UFC's announced a press conference tomorrow. Obviously, they're going to announce that John Jones is the main event. They've had this mystery question mark up there this whole time. The only real question is, who is his opponent going to be? Who should it be and who will it be? I got to say, the number one name out there, I would think, has got to be Alexander Gustafsson. And if he's going to come back and he wants to come back strong, Gustafsson's been, he's been doing well himself. And he did just kind of strangely back out of a fight with an injury that wasn't really disclosed. It was very vague. So there seemed to be something funny there. But there's a lot of other guys that he could end up fighting. And we don't know if he's going to fight a light heavyweight or a heavyweight. He's been bulking up with all this weightlifting. He's had videos out on Instagram, a video that I posted here of him working out. He's in shape. He's definitely in great shape. But like I said, light heavyweight or heavyweight, I don't know. Does he fight Daniel Cormier for the belt right away? I don't think so. Of course, Brock Lesnar called out Daniel Cormier after Daniel Cormier knocked out Stipe Miocic, and that's a big money fight. That's a bigger money fight, even though it shouldn't be, in my mind. That's a bigger money fight than Jones. Brock Lesnar is a huge star, one of the biggest stars that's ever been in the UFC. He just has that drawing power. Now, I think John Jones versus Brock Lesnar would draw even more, with or without a belt. Not that Daniel Cormier is not a draw, but I think that John Jones is a bigger one. And I think John Jones versus Brock Lesnar would be gigantic. If he goes up to heavyweight, who makes sense? Francis Ngannou is looking for a fight right now. That would sell a lot of tickets. He's still a big hype machine. And I think you could sell that fight easily. Stipe Miocic has been very quiet. He does not have an opponent right now. That would blow my mind if they announced John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. That would be absolutely incredible. And that would be a legitimate, I believe, a legitimate title eliminator. Especially Stipe Miocic's got to be the number one contender. He should be getting an immediate rematch. But because of money and all, he's not. So that would be great. Cain Velasquez has been talking about coming back soon. Recently, he visited the WWE Performance Institute. That doesn't mean a whole lot because we know Brock Lesnar fights for the WWE, and they've been training together. So it may mean that there's more of a chance, honestly, that Cain comes back because those two have been training together, Brock and Cain. Cain, I just can't see Cain walking away from the sport right now. Possibly, but wrestling's not going to be any better on your back. But from what I've heard, he was healthy and he'd been thinking about coming back. Junior Dos Santos, That would be a great fight. It's been a few months since he fought. He didn't take, even though he went the whole 5 rounds, I don't think he took enough damage to where he couldn't fight again. He didn't get a medical suspension. That's an incredible fight. You want to test Jon Jones' chin at heavyweight, put him in there against Junior Dos Santos. Volkan Ozdemir, we got no time for that. No, he could easily potentially be an opponent. They could throw Anthony Smith in there if they want to throw him a softball. Anthony Smith coming off the knockout of Mauricio Shogun Rua, of course, and Alexander Gustafsson, coincidentally, kind of backed out of that fight with a vague injury. Like I said, money is on that it's probably Gustafsson. The first time they fought, you could watch that fight 3 times, or I could at least, and think a different person won it every time. That fight was razor thin, and we've needed that rematch for a very, very long time. Now, that would be very gutsy of Jon Jones to come out after 15 months of inactivity. I know he's been training, but to come out against the caliber opponent of Alexander Gustafsson and not come out with a warm-up fight like the last time he was suspended. This is like a reoccurring thing with him, if you guys haven't noticed. Like the last time he was suspended, of course, he came back against, was it Jimmy Manawa? I don't even remember. It was one of these guys that's top 5 that should be top 15. Anyways, it was a boring fight. He won easily, but he didn't really look impressive or explosive. Jon Jones, at this point in his career, it seems like he needs a certain type of opponent to get himself up for the training, to get himself up for the performance. And maybe he needs a little cocaine back in the dressing room. I don't know. He's had a few controversial things happen in his lifetime. Just keep him off of the road before this fight on November 3rd, because I really want to see it. And I'm sure they will announce the opponent tomorrow at the UFC press conference. So I'm looking forward to that press conference. Jon Jones didn't come away from this unscathed. He made the mistake of getting tied up with the California State Athletic Commission, which, of course, you go to California, they're going to take your money. I mean, you're going to get jacked. No ifs, ands, or buts. They already take a ton of money in taxes. There's a reason a lot of fighters will not fight there. A lot of athletes don't want to play for their teams anymore because they take so much money for them. Well, the California State Athletic Commission fined him $205,000 when they revoked his license. That may not seem like a lot for LeBron James and some of these guys, stars in other sports, a Russell Wilson, a Richard Sherman, a Tom Brady, you name it. These guys that are making hundreds of millions of dollars. Jon Jones is no doubt a millionaire, but trust me, $205,000 really hurt his pocketbook. Besides not being able to work for 15 months, that was probably one of the worst things that happened to him. And he represented himself in that California State Athletic Commission absolutely atrociously. That was one of the worst representations I've ever seen in a courtroom. And he threw his own lawyer under the bus for absolutely no reason. Let's throw that in there. So this case was heard and the decision was rendered by Richard H. McLaren. If that name sounds familiar, he's the chief arbitrator from Global Sports Solutions. So I find that very interesting. I believe he's been the arbitrator in several other things. I don't know why he is, and what his relationship is kind of with the UFC and USADA. I got to look into that a little more. I wanted to get this story out quickly. USADA conducts the year-round independent anti-doping program for all UFC athletes, of course. If you don't know who USADA is, I think everybody here probably knows who they are. But if you don't, they're an independent, non-profit, non-governmental agency whose sole mission is to preserve the integrity of competition, inspire true sport, and protect the rights of clean athletes in an effort to aid UFC athletes as well as their support team members, according to their website. the UFC does happen to pay them $10 million a year to do such testing, though. So I find this obviously very shady. And we all knew for a very long time this was coming. And the UFC, they were good about hiding it. They were good about hiding it for a long time. Because I came out with this video, about a month ago, saying that Jon Jones would be the main event at UFC 230. But I had no evidence. There was nothing, and the UFC had nothing concrete, nothing legally, because the suspension was just handed down over this weekend. And they knew what was going to happen, I'm sure, for quite a while. They've been talking to this arbitrator and yada, yada, yada. I mean, connect the dots. Come on. But they did a very good job at keeping this away from Mr. Ariel Helwani, who seems to break all of Dana White's stories. I'm curious who he thinks Jon Jones' opponent is going to be. Like I said, I think, Alexander Gustafsson would be the best choice for the card, but that's already a stacked card. I think you put Jon Jones on there, and you already have the Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier fight. You already have Derek Brunson versus Israel Adesanya. You have the return of Jacare Souza. Does it really matter who Jon Jones fights? I don't know that you waste the big name on him or risk him taking a loss. Honestly, this card is already so star-studded, already so great. This is a complete card without Jon Jones. And now it's just like, even as much as UFC pay-per-views have went up, it's like, take my money. I'm way more excited about UFC 230 than I am for UFC 229. UFC 229 is all about 1-2 fights. UFC 229, by the way, just had a new fight added to it. A heavyweight fight. And I'll talk about that in another video. But I want to know what you guys think. You guys have heard what I think. You've heard me ramble on. This is a conversation here. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know down there in the comments down below. Like I said, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're new here. I would hate you missing out on that 20 points of MMA IQ improvement. It's worth hitting that button just for that. But let me know what you guys think down there below. Is this fair? Am I overreacting? Has Jon Jones served his time? Should he serve more? I've heard some say that he should be banned from the sport entirely. Let me know what you think down there below. And also, who do you think he will fight and who do you think he should fight? And will they be the same things? So you guys are great at formulating your comments down there below. I know you guys are going to have a ton of them down there. I can't wait to read them and respond to all of them. As always, I love you, I respect you, and I'll see your fine asses later.